Hello, my name is Rosemarie Ferrante, and today's show is part of an ongoing series presented by CCND. CCND is the Connecticut Council for Non-Adversarial Divorce. We are the statewide nonprofit organization of Connecticut mediators and collaborative divorce practitioners. I'm proud to be vice president of CCND. Our membership includes attorneys, mental health professionals, and financial professionals. And our mission is to change the way people divorce in Connecticut by reducing conflict, by promoting respectful and private divorce processes, and by encouraging a child-centered approach. In today's show, we're focusing on divorce mediation and specifically the trainings that CCND offers. I am so happy to be joined today by Eva Defranco and Louise Zito, two longtime divorce professionals in Connecticut. Eva, are they joining us? Eva, there she is. Hello.
Hi.
Has been practicing law for over 35 years. She's practiced family and civil litigation since 1986. And Eva, nice to have you here. Louise also has been practicing for over 35 years, and she's been mediating since 2010. Both Eva and Louise co-founded the Connecticut Family Mediation Training Group, and they have been providing training mediations since 2018. They are also both past presidents of CCND and very well known in the state of Connecticut for being amazing, wonderful divorce practitioners who have been guiding non-adversarial divorce in the state. So thank you both for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
So we're going to start with just a discussion on divorce mediation. Eva, can you give us a summary of what divorce mediation is?
Sure. So divorce mediation is a non-adversarial process for divorce that is increasingly popular. It's gained a lot of traction over the last 20 years. Now it's more popular than ever. Divorcing spouses essentially hire a neutral professional, most of the time a seasoned divorce lawyer, but not always, and we'll talk about that a little more. And the role of that mediator is essentially to guide and facilitate, to educate, to help parties reach agreement on every substantive issue that has to be understood and essentially addressed in a divorce process. The mediator also is instrumental in helping the parties file the necessary paperwork in order to get the order of, we call it a marital dissolution in Connecticut, which is the same thing as a divorce. But the crux of the mediation and the major difference, I would say, in a mediated divorce and what people think of as a more traditional divorce, which is an adversarial process, is that in divorce mediation, the actual parties getting divorced are the major players. It's their goals and their ability to come to craft an agreement that guides the divorce process.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm sure I missed some major principles, but that's how I see it.
And Louise, maybe you can answer this because Eva did refer to many divorce mediators are attorneys. When an attorney has the role of a mediator, how is that different than an attorney who's representing somebody in an adversarial process in court?
Well, an attorney mediator is not representing anyone. It's not a legal representation. It's an opportunity to help the divorcing couple or separating couple address all of the issues that they have to address in a divorce. So the mediator does not give advice. The mediator helps guide conversations, helps promote people reaching options, brainstorming options, gives them tools to work with in order to make the decisions that they have to make, but the mediator does not offer legal advice. The mediator probably will refer the participants of the mediation to independent counsel so that they can have someone that can explain the law to them and explain the judicial norms to them and help them understand some of the things that the legal issues that they'd be discussing.
And I think that the role of review counsel is something we've certainly spoken a lot about. The role is crucial to supporting the divorce mediation process. Eva, can you talk a little bit about what the appropriate role of review counsel is in a mediation process?
Sure. Let me just piggyback on something Louise said, because it's pretty important. So if I'm the mediator and I try to give legal advice to one of the parties, that cuts against the principle of neutrality. And in order to be an effective mediator, as you can imagine, you really need to develop rapport, but also develop some trust with your parties. And once you give legal advice, that legal advice as mediator becomes something that either the parties aspire to, or one party thinks you're siding with the other. So it's not all that helpful for the mediator, who is more in a facilitator role, as Louise said, to offer private legal advice. And most experienced mediators would say that you're crossing an ethical boundary in doing that. So the role of review counsel is very important, and both Louise and I spend a lot of time on review counsel in our trainings, and also educating our clients who are entering a divorce mediation process. So I would say the primary role of review counsel is to give their party, their client, and review counsel can act as review counsel for both parties, but to give their client private legal advice about the range of best case, worst case scenarios that a court might do. That's what we call judicial norms. And in Connecticut, there are a lot of issues in divorce are not black and white issues. For example, we don't have alimony guidelines. We are an equitable distribution state. So when I tell you a range, it's always a range. But that is critical advice for parties to get when they are entering into mediation, because usually we mediate in the shadow of the law. We can't submit agreements in mediation that are not going to be approved by the court, and the court has to look at these in light of financial affidavits and all of the information that's presented to a court, and make an independent finding that these agreements are fair and reasonable. So if parties are armed with this private legal advice, they can participate in the mediation with more confidence. They can participate in the mediation with a better understanding of what their options are. And it allows the actual neutral mediator to protect the integrity of that role as facilitator, and not as somebody offering a professional legal advice to either party. The other important role of the review counsel is to help clients understand what their goals are and what their options are. And then finally, it's really helpful for review counsel to get another set of eyes on the ultimate agreement that the parties enter into, and typically the attorney mediator drafts, because often review counsel have very important suggestions about language in an agreement, and fulfill the important role to make sure that their own client understands exactly what the agreement stands for.
Thank you. So to touch on that, it looks like, Louise, you want to add something, but I'd like you both to sort of respond to this piece of it. Louise, you had mentioned the difference between a litigator and a mediator. And so as attorneys going through law school, we're learning to advocate for our clients. This is obviously very different. And so for the public, when somebody is looking for a mediator, what should they be looking for? And this really speaks to the training and how critical it is, because it's not any lawyer can be a mediator. And as Eva said, we will talk about other potential professionals who can mediate. But
Well,
do you want to speak to that, Louise?
sure. It kind of dovetails on what I was thinking of, hearing Eva's explanation. It's really important to get a mediator who's trained, and it's really important to use review counsel or consulting counsel that have been trained, because what's at the heart of mediation really is self-determination. And we're not trained in law school to allow parties to make decisions for themselves. We're trained to tell them what's best for them. We're trained to say, we have all this experience, we know the law, and here are your three options, and option B is the best option for you because of X, Y, and Z. Well, mediators don't do that. Review counsel don't necessarily do that. So when it's really important for review counsel to understand the agreements that have been made to date and why they've been made, what the parties' interests are. In other words, what's most important to them to get them to reach a certain agreement or a certain conclusion, and to examine that in light of the big picture. And so the advice that review counsel is giving should not be contrary to what's important to the clients or what their common goals and objectives are. Obviously, if somebody's agreeing to something that's patently unfair, then it's the role of review counsel to address that. And it's also the role of review counsel to make sure they understand what they're agreeing to. But it's not the role to say, no, you shouldn't do this because 9 out of 10 people would do it differently, or because it's not in your best interest based on what I think is best for you, but really what's in the best interest based on what they think is best for them.
Thank you. So we've alluded to our membership, which is not only comprised of legal professionals, but also mental health and financial professionals. Who can be trained in divorce mediation, and why is it important for all divorce professionals to be trained in divorce mediation, whether they're acting as mediator or not?
Well, anyone can be trained. I think, anyone working with families, this is an important foundation to have. And people come to us for the training that are not necessarily aiming to be divorce mediators, but they use it to enhance the business that they're in. So mental health professionals, especially those dealing with custody issues and parenting issues, can take the training, and they can become mediators, or they can just be there to offer assistance to the mediator and the participants when issues come up with parenting. Sometimes assistance is needed in helping to build a parenting plan. Sometimes a co-mediation is done because the issues concerning the children are really extreme. You may have very different styles of parenting, and it helps to have a mental professional on board working with the parents, working through these steps. And the same holds through for a financial professional. You may bring in a financial professional to address certain financial specifics in the divorce. One thing that comes to mind is closely held family businesses. It's a highly charged emotional issue, and how people address that in a family situation is very different than how they would address it in a business situation. Also, some of the compensation plans we have now and retirement plans are very complex. And it really helps to have a financial person involved. And again, they could be ancillary to the mediation, or they could be the mediator and then call in an attorney to write the legal papers and the final agreement.
Thank you. Eva, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think it was really well said. I mean, for my own practice, just to bring the point home, I often, and it's really added value to my clients, I often use mental health professionals and or divorce financial planners to do what they do best. Their highest and best use is different than my highest and best use. And we're in a problem solving methodology that allows the mediator or the co-mediators to work together and cooperate. For example, I have a number of cases right now where parents who want to do the best they can for their children are having some parenting issues. And it's not unusual for me to bring in a co-mediator or simply send my clients to a mediator who's a mental health professional, because they have more knowledge about the developmental needs of the children at various ages, and they're just better trained in terms of being able to facilitate a parenting plan with those kinds of specific developmental issues in mind. So it really works out well for everybody.
So, just to summarize, divorce mediation is really an integrative service, and it's a team like approach. And every family is so unique. And so, in one family, perhaps a co-parenting counselor would be helpful. Potentially, a certified divorce financial analyst or the party's CPA might be called in. And it sounds like it's really an organic process that is guided by the mediator. And the mediator's role and goal is to provide resources and information best suited for that specific family. Is that fair?
Well said.
Absolutely.
So, before we go on to talk about the specific training, we talked about that the training is appropriate for any professional who assists families. Um, is it also appropriate, and why is it helpful for trained mediators to take this course again?
Well, I'm a big advocate of training. I mean, I've attended many, many, many trainings in my career, and I think it's important to get different perspectives, to be exposed to different styles. I think there's always an opportunity to hear something you haven't heard before, or maybe to hear it in a different way, and be able to add tools to your toolbox and different skills and abilities. I think we all have a lot to learn, and we never know it all. And it's important to recognize that if you're going to be in this field. Also, things change. I mean, culturally, things changes. We never could have anticipated the impact of COVID on divorcing families, and whoever thought we would be in that kind of a pandemic. So, it's really important to keep getting trained, to keep having conversations, to keep learning, and to keep becoming aware of yourself. Self-awareness as a mediator is so key. So the trainings are not necessarily limited to the ABCs or the XYZs of being a mediator, but also learning how to know yourself, and also how to take care of yourself, because working with families is a very stressful field, and it's really important to know how to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah, Rosemarie, you made a really good point before that, some of us are, have our own professional training, which is sometimes helpful to mediation and sometimes not helpful to mediation. So lawyers are trained, as Louise said, to give advice, and there's a lot of presumption about what our clients need from a lawyering perspective. So in the mediation training, lots of what we do is untraining, particularly lawyers, but enforcing this paradigm shift that occurs slowly in an evolutionary process over time from the inside out and on an individual level. So we're all at various stages in the evolution of our development as mediators, which coincides with our development as humans. And sometimes you're able to hear something And sometimes you're not able to hear something until you've evolved and had some experience. So to your point, Rosemarie, there's nothing better than doing trainings over and over again at various evolutionary stages of your own development. And if you can take the time, and this is a lot of time because it's a 40-hour training, but if you can take the time and do it mid-career, and I feel so blessed and fortunate to get to do this training. I always tell Louise that, after I've done the training, my skills are at the best they've ever been for a couple of weeks, and then I step back to where they were. But it's really just a breath of fresh air and very energizing to redo trainings like these.
I love that, what you had said about untraining. And I think that's so important because it is a very different process than what many of us as professionals are used to. Could you tell us specifically a little bit more about the 40-hour training? It's coming up for everyone's information in February, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th from 8:30 to 12:30, and then February 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th from 12 to 5. So as you said, it is 40 hours. Can you give us a breakdown of what the mediation training encompasses?
So on a very general level, it really is an internal journey of self-awareness, skills, practice, and didactic information that's given in the form of lecture. The objective of the training is to help people be effective mediators, learn all the tools of the mediation, understand how effective and efficient they're being in a mediation, understand the types of mediations, and the ethics of a mediation. We have 8 or 9 or 10 role plays in the mediation training. We have lots of demonstrations in the training where the participants can sort of judge. It's usually me and Louise and another volunteer we had that does the demonstrations so that they can view different interactions and interventions in the mediation. So it's very practical and it encompasses a lot of substantive issues, and we practice the tools that we're learning.
Yeah, can I add something to that? Also, it's really important. We bring in guests to address some of the psychological issues so that we address mediating with people who have addictions, mediating with coercive control and domestic violence, mediating with people who have psychopathologies. We also address, again, through some of our guests, the neuropsychology of divorce and what your brain is doing when you're getting divorced. So it helps the people who are taking the training have a greater understanding of what the participants are going through, and understanding what they're bringing into the room emotionally. That also has to be processed along with the legal decisions. It's as much an emotional process as it is a legal and financial process, maybe more so.
Most of the participants in the training, as well as us, Louise and I, and all of the guest trainers, talk about how the training helps in every relationship in our lives. It helps us understand conflict. It helps us understand that we're all different human beings with different capacities to learn and to process. It really drives home an understanding of what we bring into the mediation room and how that affects the participants. So again, it's also an individual journey that we can all share in a safe place to make us more effective mediators, but also more effective in our everyday relationships. And people really appreciate that aspect of the mediation training.
And I just want to address one thing that Louise has said, which is in many of our families, we're dealing with special circumstances, whether it's a child with special needs. You had mentioned coercive control, you had mentioned substance abuse. And so, as mediators, it's important for us to be able to recognize those things and bring in the right team to really assist the family through the divorce process, given all of those challenges. We're starting to actually close in on our time. So I do want to just have you both really speak to um, how this training is important for membership for various different organizations, and then maybe just highlight what the next steps for mediators are after taking the training. Is that too much? Our last 2 minutes.
Well, the training, people who want to join CCND has certain training requirements. Most of the professional organizations do. So taking this training meets the membership requirements both of CCND to be a mediator, also to be a collaborative professional in CCND. This is the underlying course that you have to take, and then you take another one in collaborative practice. It meets the requirements of the Association for Conflict Resolution, for the Academy of Professional Family Members, and for the International Academy of Collaborative Professionals, which is more than a mouthful. So, and yeah, what was the second part of your
I
question?
think we have to just refer everybody to our website for more information to register for the upcoming training. Our website is gooddivorcect.com. For more information, please feel free to reach out to us. Eva, Louise, or myself are happy to answer any additional questions. Thank you both so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.